The unexpected farewell, the first time Reza Nuri saw Adeline playing piano at the university recital hall. His pencil stopped moving mid-sketch. Her fingers danced across the keys with such fluid grace that the Chopin nocturne seemed to float through the air like autumn leaves caught in a gentle breeze. When she finished and looked up, her amber eyes met his across the room, and something inexplicable passed between them. "Your playing transported me," he told her afterward, showing her the half-finished sketch of her hands he'd drawn during the performance. "I couldn't even finish my drawing." Adeline Moreau smiled, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. "Maybe you need to hear me play again to complete it." That was the beginning of their story. A talented pianist from a mysterious background and an ambitious young architect with dreams of designing buildings that moved people the way music did. Their courtship unfolded like a perfect melody, each note building upon the last. Reza's small architectural firm was just beginning to gain recognition, and Adeline had recently secured a position with the city's symphony orchestra. They moved into a modest apartment overlooking the river, where mornings began with Adeline practicing while Reza sketched at his drafting table by the window. Evenings ended with conversations that stretched into the early hours, planning futures and sharing dreams. "I want to design spaces that make people feel something," Reza would say, his dark eyes alive with passion. "The way your music makes me feel." Adeline would trace the lines of his face with her fingertips. "And I want to play music that builds worlds, the way your buildings do." 8 months into their relationship, Reza had the ring hidden in his desk drawer. He planned to propose after her solo performance with the symphony. Next week, a culmination of everything they'd built together. Then came the phone call. Reza returned home from a client meeting to find Adeline standing by the window, her face ashen, phone clutched in her trembling hand. "Who was that?" he asked, setting down his portfolio. "No one," she whispered, but her eyes told a different story. They were distant, as if suddenly seeing something far beyond their riverside apartment. That night, Adeline played a piece he'd never heard before, something haunting and filled with longing. When he awoke the next morning, the apartment was silent. No Chopin, no Bach, no Adeline. Her clothes were gone. Her piano books remained perfectly stacked. No note, no explanation, just emptiness where their life together had been. Reza searched frantically. He called her friends, the symphony, even hospitals. He filed a missing person report, but the detective found nothing suspicious, just a woman who had chosen to leave. Her final paycheck from the symphony remained unclaimed. Her family, what little she had mentioned of them, couldn't be located. As weeks turned to months, the pain transformed into something hollow. Reza poured himself into his work, sketching buildings until his fingers cramped. At night, he would sit at their window, wondering what unseen force had swept her away, like notes fading into silence. The melody of their life together had ended mid-phrase with no resolution, no final chord, just the lingering echo of what might have been. Rebuilding from ashes 5 years passed, like seasons changing outside. A window Reza rarely looked through anymore. The small architectural firm he had once operated from a converted warehouse had expanded into Nuri Design Group, with offices in 7 countries and a reputation for innovative structures that seamlessly blended function, art, and emotion. The young architect with passionate dreams had become a renowned visionary with a portfolio that graced the covers of design magazines worldwide. His most celebrated creation, the Resonance Concert Hall in Singapore, had revolutionized acoustic architecture with its mathematical precision inspired by musical theory. Critics called it a symphony in concrete and glass. Few knew that every building he designed contained a subtle homage to Adelina, curve reminiscent of a piano lid, a space where sound traveled in perfect harmony, a hidden corner where light fell exactly as it had on her face that last morning. These were his private memorials to a ghost. "Mr. Nuri, the Blackwood Foundation is on line 3, his assistant Violet announced through the intercom. "They're quite insistent about their lighthouse project," Reza sighed, setting down his pen. The Blackwood Foundation had been pursuing him for months about renovating a historic lighthouse and surrounding buildings in a small coastal town called Mel. It was hardly the type of high-profile project his firm typically handled. "Tell them I'm still considering their proposal," he replied, turning back to the Tokyo skyscraper plans on his desk. Violet appeared in his doorway instead, her expression unusually determined. "Sir, with respect, you've been considering for 3 months," Ms. Blackwood mentioned. "Something about the acoustic properties of the lighthouse keeper's cottage being perfect for musical performances. I thought that might interest you." Something in her words caught his attention. Music. It had been years since he'd allowed himself to think about music without the accompanying pain. "Fine," he conceded. "Set up a video call." The call revealed Eleanor Blackwood to be an elderly woman with sharp eyes and sharper wit. "Mr. Nuri, I've waited long enough for your answer. The lighthouse has stood for 200 years. I won't be around for 200 more. Despite himself, Reza smiled. "Why my firm, Ms. Blackwood? There are plenty of restoration specialists better suited." "Because you understand how spaces speak," she replied simply. "This lighthouse has a voice that needs preserving, and frankly, young man, you look like someone who needs to hear what it has to say." Something about her directness broke through his carefully constructed walls. 3 days later, Reza found himself on a small charter plane headed toward the coastal town of Merodale. Population 3,542. The foundation owns most of the northern coastline, his project manager explained, showing him the portfolio. Lighthouse, keeper's cottage, boathouse, and about 30 acres of protected shoreline. Reza nodded absently, gazing out the window at the approaching coastline. Below, white-capped waves crashed against rugged cliffs, and nestled in a small bay sat a cluster of buildings, surrounding a white lighthouse that rose like an elegant exclamation point against the azure sky. For the first time in years, he felt something stir within him, a faint resonance, like a forgotten melody heard from a distance. Perhaps it was just the symmetry of the landscape or the perfect proportions of the lighthouse. Whatever it was, as the plane descended, Reza found himself sketching again, not for a client or a deadline, but for the pure joy that had first drawn him to architecture. The small town welcomed him with salty air and curious glances. His driver, a weathered local named Thomas, provided unsolicited commentary as they wound through narrow streets. Lighthouse has been dark for decades, but folks here still look to it, Thomas said, navigating the coastal road. Ms. Blackwood's determined to bring life back to it. It started a music program for local kids up there last year. It's surprising how sound carries from that old keeper's cottage. Reza's hand froze mid-sketch. Music programs. Sound carrying across water. These coincidences were poking at scars he'd long since stopped noticing. Here we are, Thomas announced, pulling up to a small inn overlooking the harbor. You can see your project from your room. Welcome to Merodale, Mr. Nuri. As Reza stepped from the car, the wind carried a faint sound across the water, the distant notes of a piano. Echoes of the past morning arrived with mist rolling off the ocean, shrouding Merodale in a dreamlike haze. Reza stood at his window, coffee untouched, watching the lighthouse emerge from the fog like a ghost stepping through a veil. The melody he'd heard last night had haunted his dreams, familiar yet elusive, like a half-remembered conversation. The foundation scheduled your site tour for 9, Thomas said, appearing in the lobby as Reza descended the stairs. Ms. Blackwood insists on personally showing you the cottage first. The drive along the curved coastal road was silent, save for the rhythmic pulse of waves against the shore. As they approached the lighthouse complex, Reza noticed a small garden next to the keeper's cottage, where wildflowers grew in seemingly random patterns that, to his trained eye, revealed deliberate design. Eleanor Blackwood waited on the cottage porch, her silver hair gleaming in the morning light. You look tired, Mr. Nuri. Did the lighthouse keep you awake? Not the lighthouse, he admitted. I thought I heard music. Something flickered across her face, too quick to interpret. The acoustics here are remarkable. Sound carries across water in strange ways. She gestured toward the cottage door. Shall we? The keeper's cottage was larger than it appeared from outside. Its interior a surprising blend of historical preservation and thoughtful modernization. Sunlight streamed through windows positioned to capture both dawn and dusk. But what stopped Reza in his tracks was the baby grand piano positioned in the corner of the main room, angled precisely to face the lighthouse through the bay window. His fingers involuntarily twitched at his side, remembering mornings spent watching Adeline's hands dance across similar keys. The music program meets here 3 afternoons a week, Eleanor explained. Our instructor has quite a gift for teaching children. As if on cue, the cottage door swung open, and 2 children, a boy and girl of about 4, burst into the room, their laughter preceding them like music. Grandmother, the girl called, rushing toward Eleanor. We found shells shaped like. She stopped abruptly upon seeing Reza, her sentence evaporating into silence. The boy, slightly taller than his sister, approached more cautiously. Are you the architect? He asked, his voice carrying a surprising gravity for one so young. Reza nodded, unable to speak as he stared into the child's eyes, amber eyes with flecks of gold that caught the light. Exactly as Adeline's had. The girl had the same eyes, the same chestnut hair. Theo Juliet, this is Mr. Nuri, Eleanor said, her voice gentle but firm. He's here to help restore the lighthouse. Will you fix the music room too? Juliet asked, her initial shyness dissolving. Mama says the floor vibrates perfectly when she plays Chopin. The mention of Chopin sent a jolt through Reza's body. Before he could respond, a voice called from outside, a voice that stopped time itself. Theo, Juliet, you know better than to rush ahead. Adeline stood in the doorway, a basket of shells in her hands, her sentence trailing off as her eyes met Reza's. The basket slipped from her fingers, shells scattering across the wooden floor like notes from a disrupted melody. The cottage fell silent save for the persistent rhythm of waves outside and the sudden, thunderous beating of Reza's heart. You two should help me with lunch preparations, Eleanor said smoothly, ushering the confused children toward a back room. Your mother and Mr. Nuri have some catching up to do. When the door closed behind them, the silence became a physical presence, dense and unyielding, between 2 people who had once shared every thought. Adeline, her name felt foreign on his tongue after so many years of deliberate avoidance. She looked the same yet different, her face slightly more angular, a few strands of silver threading through her chestnut hair, a new wariness behind her eyes. But her hands, the hands he'd sketched countless times, were unchanged, still a pianist's hands, capable of creating worlds with 10 fingers. Reza. His name on her lips sounded like both a greeting and a goodbye. I never thought. How did you find this place? I didn't, he replied, struggling to process the reality before him. The Blackwood Foundation hired my firm. Are you? He couldn't complete the question. Adeline glanced toward the door where the children had disappeared. Eleanor is my mother's cousin. She's been our protector. She paused, gathering herself. Those children, they have your eyes. Reza finished, the truth landing like a physical blow. They're mine, aren't they? She nodded once, a tear slipping down her cheek. I didn't know I was pregnant when I left. I discovered it 3 weeks later. She moved toward the window, putting distance between them. By then, it was too late to come back. Too late. The words came out sharper than intended. 5 years. Adeline, not a word. Not a message. I thought you were dead, or worse, that everything between us had meant nothing. It meant everything, she whispered, turning to face him. That's why I had to leave. Asterisk unspoken truths. Eleanor found me. Adeline continued, moving to gather the scattered shells. She'd been searching for me since my mother's death. She brought us here, gave us sanctuary. Victor's network never reached this far. Reza knelt to help her, their fingers brushing as they reached for the same shell. The twins, he said. They don't know about me. They know they have a father who designs beautiful buildings. They've seen your work in magazines. I couldn't bear to tell them nothing. The cottage door swung open, and the children peered in cautiously. Mama, Juliet asked. Grandmother says to ask if Mr. Nuri is staying for lunch. Before Adeline could answer, Reza smiled at the girl. I'd be honored to, if that's okay with you. Theo stepped forward. Do you really make buildings that look like music? I try to, Reza answered honestly. Like Mama's piano playing. Reza met Adeline's eyes over the children's heads. Exactly like your mama's piano playing. The lunch was surreal. Reza sitting at a table with children who had his jawline in Adeline's eyes, listening to their stories about tide pools and piano lessons. Eleanor watched the tableau with knowing eyes, occasionally steering the conversation when silence threatened. After the meal, Eleanor took the twins to collect more shells, leaving Reza and Adeline alone again. Victor died last year, Adeline said once the door closed. Heart attack in his Monaco penthouse. Eleanor's investigator confirmed it. Reza absorbed this, yet you stayed here. This became home, she said simply. The children love it here, and she hesitated. I couldn't bear to disrupt your life again. My life? Reza laughed without humor. My life has been buildings and empty hotel rooms. You didn't disrupt it, Adeline. You took it with you when you left. Asterisk symphony of second chances. The following weeks unfolded in a cautious dance. Reza extended his stay in Merodell, working on the lighthouse restoration while slowly building bridges to the twins. He taught Theo how to sketch buildings that held music, showed Juliet how to measure spaces to capture perfect sound. Adeline watched with a mixture of joy and trepidation as her children embraced the father they were just beginning to know. He draws like you know, she told Reza one evening as they sat on the cottage porch, watching the twins chase fireflies in the garden. Theo, he sees mathematics in everything, just like you do. Juliet plays like you, Reza replied. I heard her practicing yesterday. She feels the music. The unspoken question hung between them. What happens now? It was Eleanor who finally addressed it, cornering Reza in the lighthouse one afternoon. My cousin's daughter has suffered enough for her father's sins, she said bluntly. Those children deserve their father. The question is, are you willing to be that father, even if it means building a new kind of life? That night, Reza sat alone on the cliffs, sketching by moonlight, not buildings, but Adeline playing the piano, the twins laughing, the lighthouse standing sentinel over them all. His family. When dawn broke, he found Adeline at the piano in the cottage, playing the haunting melody he'd heard that first night. I wrote this the day I left, she explained without stopping. I've been working on the ending for 5 years, but it never felt right. Reza placed his completed sketch on the piano. The drawing showed not just the lighthouse restoration, but a new complex surrounding it, a home built for music and light and family. Perhaps, he said gently, we need to compose the ending together. Adeline's fingers paused on the keys. I never stopped loving you, she whispered, even when I thought I'd never see you again. Reza knelt beside the piano bench, taking her hands in his. Then let's not waste another day apart. From the doorway, Theo and Juliet watched their parents with curious eyes, witnessing the beginning of a new movement in their families, Symphony One built on truth, forgiveness, and the chance to create something beautiful from what had once been broken. The lighthouse restoration was completed 6 months later, its beam now shining across the water each night, a beacon guiding ships home, just as love had guided a shattered family back together, proving that sometimes what seems lost forever is simply waiting to be found again.